My name's Sarah, and I'm 20 years old. Just had my birthday 3 days back. At home, it's me, my mom's stepdad, and my stepsister, who's 15. She's honestly the worst. Always trying to outdo me, acting all snobby and mean. We've never gotten along. My dad passed away when I was little, so I barely remember him. But I sure do remember all the arguing with my mom. Sometimes I think if my dad were still here, things might have been easier. Mom got married to my stepdad when I was 16, and he moved in with us. But she's been with him since I was 13. After dating for 3 years, they got married and moved in together. Even before they got married, my stepsister was a big problem. When my stepdad moved in, she got even worse. She annoyed me all the time and started more fights. I told my mom many times and even talked to her dad about it. But they said it's just normal fighting between siblings and didn't do anything about it. The truth is, they both loved my stepsister more. My stepdad always took her side because she's his real daughter. And even my mom treated her better than me. It hurt because she never did the same for me. As I grew up, I realized my mom and I are very different, and she didn't like that at all. When I was young, I liked boyish things like sports, games, and cars. But my mom wanted me to be more girly. She wanted me to wear dresses, do my hair, and learn makeup when I was just 7 years old. It's not that those things are bad, they just weren't my style. I felt like I couldn't be myself if I was always trying to please my mom. This caused a lot of arguments between us. She wanted me to be like her mini-me, but I wanted to be my own person. She never understood or respected that. My stepsister, on the other hand, was exactly what my mom wanted. It hurt because I was trying so hard to get my mom to like me for who I am. But then my stepsister came along and stole all her attention. My stepsister got all the love and attention from my mom, which made me really sad. It was hard enough that my mom took her side all the time, but my stepsister's attitude made it even worse. I couldn't stand being around her and couldn't wait to leave for college. So when I turned 18, I was super happy because I graduated from high school. Soon, I'd be off to college with a sports scholarship for playing lacrosse. I was ready to leave this place behind. I thought my mom would do something special for my 18th birthday since it would be the last one I celebrated at home with her. After this, I'd only come home for the holidays. I thought my mom would be excited for me, but I was wrong. Ever since my stepsister came into the picture, I've felt like I don't belong. I shouldn't have expected anything different. Not only did my mom not do anything special for my birthday, but she also sat me down later that day to talk about the future. She said my stepsister would start college soon, but she didn't have a sports scholarship like me, and her grades weren't good enough for an academic one. So my mom wanted me to help pay for her college, or else I wouldn't be welcome to stay here anymore. I was shocked. When I asked her to repeat herself, she said they decided to start saving up for my stepsister's college fund now to avoid problems later. Now that I was an adult, my mom and stepdad wanted me to help pay for my stepsister's college expenses. If I didn't, they said I couldn't live with them anymore. I was shocked by this demand because I couldn't afford to help. It felt crazy that they would cut me off for not helping my stepsister, who I didn't even get along with. My mom seemed serious about it, which made me really nervous. I didn't want to argue, so I said I needed time to think and went to my room. My mom works as a nurse, and my stepdad is a pediatrician. They both work at the same hospital, so they must make enough money to support my stepsister without needing my help. It felt unfair for them to ask me to contribute, especially since my stepsister and I didn't even have a good relationship. If we did, I might have considered helping out, but she's not a nice person, and I can't stand her. Why should I help pay for her college? It doesn't make any sense. Plus, I'm heading off to college myself soon. How can she expect me to send money when I'll need it for my own expenses? Even if I find a job there, it's not fair to ask me to chip in for my stepsister when I'll probably need that money for myself. I can't even refuse because of the threat of being kicked out. I want to come home for the holidays, and I'm not sure if I'll be allowed to do that if I don't help. It's scary to think I might end up homeless after college. After thinking it over, I realized there's just no way I can make this work. This situation wasn't fair to me at all. Instead of arguing with my mom, I decided to talk to my grandparents. I didn't want to keep negotiating with my mom only to be disappointed. Honestly, I didn't think it was worth arguing with her. She never understood my side and always favored my stepsister over me. My mom didn't want me to talk to my grandparents much. She said they were fragile and didn't need any trouble from me. I was only allowed to talk to them about safe things and could only visit them with her, never on my own. Once, I went to visit them without telling my mom, and when I told her later, she got really upset. I decided not to visit my grandparents alone again to avoid any drama. Even though they seemed fine to me, I didn't want to upset my mom. I'd always followed her rules about how to interact with them. But that day, I knew I had to break the rules and talk to them if I wanted their help convincing my mom. My grandparents were the only ones who could make my mom listen. I really needed them on my side this time to avoid being kicked out. I couldn't imagine working through college just to help my stepsister. So I planned to talk to my mom and secretly record her repeating the conditions she'd set for me. At first, I just wanted to tell my grandparents about the crazy demand my mom made and how she threatened to kick me out if I didn't help my stepsister. But as I spoke, all my feelings came rushing out and I ended up crying while explaining everything to them. I guess I wasn't handling my mom's rejection as well as I thought. I opened up about how badly I was treated at home, and they seemed shocked because whenever they saw me with my mom, I acted happy. But that was just a mask I had to wear because my mom didn't want my grandparents to worry. She said they were too old and sick. I never believed that because my grandparents were only in their early 60s and looked healthy to me. I think my mom didn't want me talking to my grandparents because she was scared I'd tell them how she treated me. She knew they'd be upset with her for favoring my stepsister over me. And that's exactly what happened when I told them everything. They comforted me and said they'd fix things. I wasn't sure what they meant, but my grandpa looked angry. After I calmed down, they gave me some money and told me to go out with my friends for my 18th birthday. They promised to make things right while I was out, which made me feel relieved. So I went out with my friends, and we had a great time celebrating my birthday late into the night. At around 9 o'clock, my grandparents texted me, asking me to come back to their place instead of going home. So I went there. It was surprising that I hadn't heard from my mother by then. Usually, if my grandparents talked to her about what I said, she'd be eager to confront me, so her silence felt strange. I got to my grandparents' house by 10 o'clock. After freshening up, they sat me down and said they'd talk to my mom. They assured me that everything was okay now. They explained that they asked my family to leave the house they were living in so they could transfer ownership to me. Turns out that house was a wedding gift from my grandparents to my parents, and they've been living there ever since. When my grandparents found out how my mom treated me, they realized they had to step in. They talked to her and asked her to take back what she said to me and treat me better. Instead of admitting she was wrong, she got defensive and told my grandpa to stay out of it. She thought now that I was an adult, I should start earning and giving back to the family, or I wouldn't have a place in her home anymore. That made my grandpa really mad because it wasn't fair. After a heated argument, he told her to leave the house since it was still legally his property. He never formally transferred ownership to her, so he had the power to evict her. She chose to leave rather than be a better mom to me. Not a surprise. My mom told my grandpa that her main focus was her own family now, not me, as if I wasn't part of her family or related to her by blood. She said she'd clear out of the house by the end of the week if that's what he wanted, then hung up. That's why I hadn't heard from her. My grandparents explained that it wasn't just what I told them that made them act, but also how my mom had been treating them for the past couple of years since she got married. She believed her husband and stepdaughter were her only family now and visited her parents only once or twice every 2 months. They stopped asking her to visit more often, but they did ask her to let me talk to them or visit them, and she always made excuses, claiming I was too busy, which wasn't true. She just didn't want me to see my grandparents because she was afraid I'd tell them the truth. She cleverly manipulated us into staying apart for her own selfish reasons. Now, her manipulation and deceit had caught up with her, and she had to leave the house she'd lived in for almost 2 decades. I was upset that she chose my stepsister over me, but even more disgusted and angry that she thought her actions were justified. I was really disappointed and had given up hope that my mom would ever love me as much as my stepsister. I started to see her true colors. I actually felt relieved spending the night at my grandparents' place because I didn't want to see or hear from my mom. I hated being her daughter, and I hated her even more for what she did. The next morning, I went home with my grandpa to pack some clothes and essentials to stay with my grandparents until my mom and her family moved out. It was around noon, and nobody had left for work. Even my stepsister was home. They all looked upset, but I ignored them and went straight to my room to pack. My grandpa helped me. After about 10 minutes, my mom came into the room and insisted on talking to me in person. I didn't want to, but she kept pushing, so I agreed. She said she was bluffing on the phone with my grandpa and couldn't afford to move out so quickly. Now she needed me to talk to my grandpa to fix things. I was shocked that she would even make another request of me after everything that happened. So I flat out refused right to her face and told her she had no right to talk to me after what she did. She made her decision, and now she had to stick to it. Then she started to cry and said she didn't mean to hurt me. She claimed she was only trying to teach me responsibility when she asked for my help with my stepsister's college fund. She said if I had just talked to her instead of complaining to my grandparents, I would have known she didn't mean what she said. She only wanted to teach me to be responsible with money. She promised that all the money I sent for my stepsister's college fund would go into a separate account that she planned to give me later if I just talked to her once about my feelings. She said she never intended to kick me out, especially over something like this. But now, because of my actions, she might lose her home, and that hurt her deeply. She said I could do whatever I wanted, but asked me to remember that she loved me and always wanted what was best for me. I was speechless and didn't know what to do. It's been 2 days and I haven't talked to anyone about it. I'm not sure if my mom was telling the truth, but I feel guilty about it. I can't talk to my friends or family, so I'm turning to you for advice. I did tell my grandparents what my mom said, and my grandpa was skeptical. He thought my mom was just bluffing to manipulate me into letting them stay. I agreed with him. I became emotional because I didn't believe my mom had suddenly changed. The only way to know for sure was to test her. So I called her and told her I still wanted my grandpa to transfer the ownership of the house to me, just in case. At first, my mom seemed surprised and tried to reassure me, but when I insisted, she got defensive and accused me of not trusting her. I argued back, saying I couldn't suddenly trust her after years of mistreatment. She snapped at me, saying she didn't want a daughter like me. This just confirmed my suspicions that she was only being nice to avoid eviction and gain legal ownership of the house. Well, she showed her true colors, and I won't let her have the house. She can go to hell for all I care. If she doesn't want me as a daughter, fine. I don't want her as a mother either. Update 2, the legal process is done, and the house is officially mine. My mom has started moving out. Initially, she had a week, but we extended it to 2 weeks. Now she has about 4 days left. My grandparents plan to sell their current house and move in with me to take care of the house when I'm at college. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'm excited to begin my new life. Update 3. So this might be my last update for a while now that things are falling into place. My mom moved out today, but not before she handed me the keys and warned me nastily that I might regret this decision. I don't understand her bitterness, considering she found an apartment near her school and work on short notice. It's smaller, but she should be grateful, like I am for my amazing grandparents and supportive friends. I'm also grateful for everyone here. Despite being strangers, you've all been kind to me and I appreciate it. I'm typing this in my old room, in my old house, but now with a family who loves me. In a few months, I'll be off to college. I'm finally living the life I've always wanted, and I couldn't be happier. Stay tuned for more stories about my journey.
Hey, some more packages arrived today. Hugo called out. What's in them? I asked. Oh, just some fishing gear. A colleague at work invited me to go fishing, so I bought some new stuff. Fishing gear? I felt uneasy seeing my husband Hugo's excitement. Didn't you buy fishing gear when we first got married and never used it? I was too busy to go, but that old gear is outdated. If I'm going, I need new stuff. I see. Is there a problem with that? Hugo's tone became defensive. It's not that, but my colleague was kind enough to invite me. I can't just say no. I have work, you know. I can't dwell on sentiment like you do. I understood what Hugo was saying, but it was hard to believe we were a couple sharing the same sorrow when he seemed so happy, like nothing had happened. I'm Cynthia, 33 years old, and we've been married for 6 years. Hugo was making these fishing plans just 2 months after our daughter passed away. I still couldn't get over my grief, but I couldn't understand how Hugo seemed so unaffected. My father-in-law, Wilson, passed away in our 2nd year of marriage. He adored his granddaughter and loved her more than anything. I wonder if they're together in heaven now. That's the only thought that comforts me. Before he died, Wilson told me, "Don't let Hugo and your mother-in-law Rachel handle the money." I realized after getting married that Hugo and Rachel are big spenders. They spend without thinking if they have money. That's why Wilson always managed the finances. Wilson was a gentle soul, always looking out for me. Having no family of my own, he was like a real father to me, and his death hit me hard. Our daughter, Laura, was born a year after our marriage. She was such a bright and cheerful girl, always bringing light into our lives. "Mom, everyone's so jealous of my packed lunch. I bet it's the best in preschool." Then Mom will have to try even harder. "Mom, can I ask for a little favor?" "What is it?" "Can you make more food for my next packed lunch? I want to eat more." "Can you eat that much?" "I won't leave any, I promise." "Okay, I'll do it." The following month, Laura's preschool teacher quietly told me something. There was a child in class who never had a mom and whose dad was too busy with work to make a packed lunch, always bringing just a supermarket sandwich and an apple. Laura had been sharing her packed lunch with this child. "Laura's packed lunch is more than I can eat, so please help me eat it," she would say, splitting it in half. Hearing this, I was so proud of Laura. Such a kind and wonderful child. Every expression of Laura's, her angry face, her crying face, and her brightest smiles, were all treasures to me. And then one day, that treasure was suddenly gone. The night before, Laura went to bed as usual, just a bit earlier than normal. "I'm sleepy," she said, but I just thought she was tired from preschool. After watching Laura start to breathe softly in her sleep, I left the bed. Usually Laura and I sleep together. After Laura fell asleep, I cleaned up dinner, took a shower after Rachel did, finished cleaning the shower room, and by the time I returned to the bedroom, it was almost midnight. Hugo was away on a business trip that night. Laura was lying quietly in bed. I thought she was sleeping well, but as I was about to get into bed, I noticed something was wrong. I couldn't hear Laura's breathing. "What?" I reached out to touch Laura's cheek. It was noticeably colder than usual. Laura, what's wrong?" Laura was completely unresponsive. I couldn't understand what was happening, but I knew I had to call an ambulance. I jumped in with Laura, clutching her cold hand. As soon as the paramedics saw her, I noticed a grim expression on their faces. One of them began as they rushed her to the hospital. "Laura, you'll be okay, right? You'll get better once we're at the hospital, right?" I repeated these words to myself, desperately hoping they were true. But when we arrived, the first thing the doctor said was, "I'm terribly sorry, but she's already gone." I became frantic, begging the doctor to examine Laura over and over. It couldn't be true. She was fine before bed. The cause was unknown. These sudden events can happen even with small children, the doctor said. I had heard such things before, but never imagined it could happen to my own child. Laura and I had only lived together for 4 short years. I thought we had decades ahead of us. I couldn't believe she was suddenly gone. Overwhelmed, I panicked and passed out. When I woke up, Hugo and Rachel were there, having been notified of what happened. I realized I had forgotten to call Rachel when I left the house. "Where's Laura?" I hoped it was all a bad dream, but Hugo gestured that she was gone. How can this be? Neither Hugo nor Rachel said anything, but their eyes seemed to confirm my worst fears. For a while, I was almost catatonic. I cried looking at Laura's things, cried watching her favorite cartoons, and cried remembering her in everything I did. At first, Hugo didn't say anything, but gradually he began to sigh audibly and mutter, "She's so morbid." Rachel too started to nag me. "Hey, how long are you going to be in a daze? Housework is Cynthia's job, isn't it? Could you please get it together?" "I'm sorry," I said, knowing I shouldn't be like this. But my heart was heavy and I just couldn't function as efficiently as before. Yet, as they say, time heals. About 6 months later, I started to manage the daily routines normally again. Hugo did cry a bit at the funeral, but he was never what you would call a doting father. He preferred playing games over spending time with Laura, which is why she wasn't very attached to him. Maybe Hugo wasn't as heartbroken because he didn't feel much of a connection as a parent. But who else will mourn for Laura, our daughter who only lived for 4 years, if not her parents? About a month after Laura's death, Hugo returned to his usual spendthrift self, enjoying shopping and browsing the web. When Laura died, both Hugo and Rachel looked at me as if it was my fault, like they were silently blaming me. But they didn't say anything, probably because they weren't as heartbroken about her absence as I was. I didn't expect them to grieve the same way, but I wish Hugo, as a parent who lost a child, would have been more supportive. Rachel, on the other hand, went back to her routine within a week. She resumed shopping, going out with friends, and laughing as if Laura had never existed. When Laura was born, Rachel frowned upon seeing her face. She looks more like Cynthia than Hugo. We can't expect much from her future, she would say. She often ignored Laura and seemed reluctant to interact with her, probably not feeling any special affection. She didn't shed a tear at the funeral. Their attitudes have always been a point of contention for me. Almost a year passed since Laura's death, and seeing Hugo and Rachel happily shopping, I felt an indescribable frustration. They never talked to Laura's picture. How could they act so normally? It seemed like we couldn't understand each other at all. Then one day, Hugo and Rachel suggested we go out together. "Where are we going?" I asked. "How about somewhere with fresh air to change our mood?" Hugo suggested. "Cynthia, you've been just going between home and the supermarket since Laura passed. That's why you're so down." "I've been worried about you too, Cynthia," Rachel added. "You've been so down." "Worried, you, Rachel?" "Of course. Cynthia is the wife of our dear son. I've been trying hard for your sake." I couldn't fully believe that, but a part of me felt a little happy to hear it. "How about hiking for a change?" Hugo continued. "Going somewhere with fresh air might lift your spirits. I want you to feel a bit better." "You really thought that?" "Of course, I'm your husband. It's natural to worry about my wife." "But you didn't seem that down." "I was holding it together. If I got down too, the house would become too gloomy. So let's go hiking." I wondered if they really cared, but it was hard to believe. "Laura would want you to be happy, Cynthia. Think of this as a tribute to her," Hugo said. That moved me. I knew Laura wouldn't want me to cry forever. That's something I've always known in my head. "But I've never hiked before," I said. "Don't worry, even I can climb it. It's more like a light hike," Hugo reassured me. "Well, if Hugo and Rachel insist." "Great, I'm looking forward to it." So I agreed to go hiking with Hugo and Rachel. We drove to the foot of the mountain and started our ascent. It was a sunny day and many people were around, which felt reassuring. But as we reached the midway point, the crowd thinned despite being told it was a beginner's course. I was surprised by the roughness of the terrain, yet Hugo and Rachel walked with ease, familiar with the area. "Hey, let's take this path," Hugo suggested. "Ha! Yeah, it looks less crowded. Let's go that way," Rachel agreed. "But shouldn't we follow the path everyone else is taking?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "It's fine. I've been here before and know the way. This path is straightforward, and you can't get lost," Hugo reassured me. "If Hugo says it's okay, then it must be," Rachel added. "Trust me, there's a really scenic spot just ahead, Cynthia. You'll be amazed." Before finishing his sentence, Hugo started walking down the path, followed by Rachel. Reluctantly, I followed them, but the further we went, the more rugged the path became, almost like a trail for animals rather than a proper path. "Wait, are you sure we're on the right path? Can we really get through here?" I asked, my concern growing. "Don't worry, we'll reach a wider path soon. Just keep up," Hugo said confidently. Hugo and Rachel continued, seemingly sure of themselves. Rachel, now 60, was surprisingly nimble, walking more effortlessly than I was. Soon they were far ahead, their figures intermittently visible through the dense foliage. "Wait, don't leave me behind here," I called out. "Hurry up, we'll run out of daylight," Hugo's voice echoed from the distance. I hurried, but couldn't catch up. Their heads, once visible, were now out of sight. "Hugo, Rachel," I called out in fear, but no reply came. As I moved forward, I lost sight of them completely. I didn't know which way to go. What should I do? I was lost, the words stranded, echoing in my mind. This can't be happening. Maybe I should have stayed put, thinking Hugo would come back for me. But as time passed, neither Hugo nor Rachel appeared. There was no sign of anyone approaching. Knowing I couldn't just stand there, I started walking again, filled with fear. My anxiety grew as I realized I couldn't tell which way was which. I decided to retrace my steps, but even finding my own tracks on this unmarked path was a challenge. I felt like I was getting deeper into the wilderness. Panicking, I stumbled several times, each fall draining more energy. Soon, the surroundings began to darken, and my anxiety intensified. If night fell, I wouldn't be able to descend. The temperature dropped as evening approached. It was late March, but the nights were still cold, especially in the mountains. What would happen if I had to spend the night here? Exhausted, I collapsed against a large tree. I can't go on. I voiced my despair. Thoughts of this being the end of my life crept in, my consciousness fading. In my dimming awareness, I heard a voice I had longed to hear. Mom, Mom. Shocked, I opened my eyes. There was my dear Laura. Laura, is that you? Laura smiled at me. Ah, I must be in heaven, I thought hazily. I reached out to hug Laura, but she seemed to slip through my arms, flying away. Laura, Mom is over here. Laura turned and started running. Wait, I reflexively stood up to follow Laura, feeling strangely energized despite my earlier exhaustion. This couldn't be the real world, but if it meant holding Laura again, I didn't care if it was a dream. When I thought of that, I naturally felt motivated. I felt invigorated and chased after Laura. Laura, wait, I called. Laura turned back, smiling. It felt like playing tag with Laura, a joyful feeling. Before I knew it, I had reached the foot of the mountain, and Laura was gone. Laura, where are you? Laura was nowhere to be seen. Had I just seen an illusion? Then someone shone a flashlight on me. Are you okay? I got lost on the trail. Are you hurt? Thank you, I'm fine. My family must be waiting for me. I headed down to the parking lot at the foot of the mountain, but our car wasn't there. Had Hugo and Rachel left without me? No way. As I stood there dumbfounded, I saw a faint image of Laura where her car should have been. Laura. I ran towards her, but my body passed right through. I couldn't embrace her. Laura looked sad, as if she wanted to tell me something. I felt she had a message for me. Then I realized something was very wrong. If we had been separated, they would have reported me missing. The area should have been in an uproar, but no one seemed to be looking for me. The parking lot was silent and deserted. Did Hugo and Rachel not even try to find me? What does this mean? Laura must have appeared to show me this. I went to the station and took a train home. I noticed people staring at me curiously, but I was too preoccupied to care. I quietly opened the door and peeked inside. I could hear Hugo and Rachel's voices, unnaturally cheerful. I sneaked into the next room and observed them through a gap in the sliding door. They were drinking and laughing, unconcerned that I hadn't returned. We did it. No more of her depressing face. Hugo said, Wonder how she's doing now, shivering in the mountains. Just thinking about it makes me laugh. Cynthia is so slow, she'll never make it back, Rachel added. It's going to be extra cold tonight. Imagine her alone and cold out there. We'll tell people she ran off with another man, then file a missing person report. When will we get the insurance money? Hugo asked. It'll take a few years before she's declared legally missing. If only her body was found, we'd get it faster. Let's say she called from the mountain. Then they'll find her sooner. My son is so clever, Rachel praised. Hearing this, I trembled with anger. I couldn't believe they had planned this. I listened to their conversation, unnoticed. I was a fool to ever think of them as family. Make sure to cry at the funeral, Hugo said. You didn't shed a tear for Laura. Well, I wasn't sad. Laura wasn't cute. She looked just like Cynthia. Rachel replied, I never wanted kids. They're just annoying. Hearing this, I burst open the sliding door. Hugo and Rachel looked at me in surprise, their expressions frozen in shock. Hugo backed up against the wall while Rachel covered her head with a throw. I realized I must have looked like a ghost covered in mud with torn clothes and scratches. I decided to play along. I'll haunt you, I declared, my voice echoing through the room. They shivered in fear. It wasn't me. Blame Hugo, Rachel yelled. What? You agreed. Mom was the one laughing about how cold it must be. Hugo protested. It's not my fault. Haunt her. Hugo pleaded. Hugo, selling out your own mother. What if I get haunted? Rachel said, terrified. I'm sorry. Please go to heaven, they begged, beyond reason. They must have really thought they had sent me to the afterlife. I'm still very much alive, I said, lifting my foot to show them. They looked utterly bewildered. What was your plan, leaving me in the middle of the mountains? I just wanted to fulfill your wish, Hugo stammered. You want to see Laura, right? I thought I'd send you to her. It was out of kindness. I was speechless. Did they really think that excuse would hold up? I heard your entire conversation, I informed them. Their faces turned even paler. Of course, I'll be divorcing Hugo. I can't stay here, not with my life on the line. Too bad you won't get the insurance money. I recorded your conversation. I'm taking it to the police. What? I'll consult a lawyer and you'll face the consequences. Cynthia's fine, right? We didn't commit any crime. I won't let this go unpunished. Perhaps it was seeing Laura that gave me strength or knowing their evil intentions, but I felt a newfound power within me. I wasn't going to lose. Rachel, still unable to believe I was alive, peeked out from under her throw at Hugo, and me, still trembling. On the contrary, I wanted to ask myself, do I look that much like a ghost? I didn't bother with their stunned faces and began gathering my belongings to leave the house. I had no destination in mind but managed to find a no-frills hotel. I was grateful for the savings I had hidden before marriage. Hugo and Rachel didn't know I had savings. They would have demanded it if they did. The next day, I visited the police and a lawyer's office. Abandoning a healthy adult in the mountains might not constitute abandonment, but intentionally leaving someone in a dangerous place was illegal. Some punishment was inevitable. My lawyer said I could claim damages for emotional distress. My recording of their conversation led to their arrest for fraud and assault, resulting in a criminal sentence. The divorce was finalized and I claimed compensation and damages. I had secretly saved money just as Wilson advised, slowly transferring small amounts from our living expenses account to another one. Even though the savings were from after marriage, all payments were made to me, leaving Hugo with nothing. I found a place to live and a job. I'll never overcome the grief of losing Laura, but I cherish the happy memories we shared. As long as I have these memories, I won't be lonely. Laura saved my life. She wanted me to live. I'm the only one who can cherish her memories. I'm not alone. Laura's smiling face is always with me. Mom, I love your smile, Laura often said. So I'll keep smiling. The smile Laura